What do you do when it's dark and you can't see? Well, you simply turn the light on, right? But what if you can't find a light source? This has been the case since the onset of the pandemic, a darkened world with seemingly no light. But what if instead of looking for the light, we became the light?
I was a nurse. I had children. I owned a house. I was involved in the PTA and I was involved in all that stuff. But nobody knew what was going on behind the scenes. And today, people that are in that environment still don't know how to reach out for help. I didn't know how. I didn't know where to go.
Thankfully, Tina did find a place to go, the McCall Center for Behavioral Health in Torrington.
I think, first of all, really recognizing that each person has agency in their own lives, and that every single person has the potential to be able to heal and live a full life and to be able to love and experience joy and the full range of human emotion.
That's how staff at the McCall Center treat each and every person who walks through their doors.
Even though COVID had everything, pretty jammed up, McCall still was taking people on. They never closed their doors. They always made it possible, one way or another, to get somebody in for an intake, to start somebody on medication.
It is life and death. It's that critical. And every bit of that has been amplified by the pandemic. And I was reminded of the story of the lamplighter. So the little girl who's looking out her bedroom window because she can't fall asleep, and her parents come in her bedroom and ask what she's looking at. And she said, "There's a man out there punching holes in the darkness." And so they looked, and it's the lamplighter, and he's moving from one street lamp to the next and providing providing light in the darkness. And I think about this chapter in all of our lives, where we can certainly recognize the darkness. And I think the darkness in the form of addiction, in the form of mental illness, and also and darkness in the form of racism, darkness in the form of loneliness, of isolation, of anxiety that so many people can relate to. I think if we stop for a minute and recognize that is part and parcel of the human condition, then we no longer other people who live kind of with that darkness all the time. And I think the other thing that can happen is that we're all the lamplighters, right? So we're doing the work of punching holes in the darkness. That's what we're called to do here. It doesn't mean that we don't have moments of kind of a crisis of, like fear, of maybe even a moment of hopelessness because it's scary. And then I think it's kind of taking that moment, recognizing that we're not alone in this, that there's a divine spark in us, and it calls us to take action.
A divine spark indeed. Especially as people of God, we're called to be those lamplighters, delivering the light of Christ into the world in every avenue of life. And when we make a contribution to the Archbishop's Annual Appeal 2021, that's just what we do. As the pandemic threatened the very foundation of healthcare as we know it, the folks at the Franciscan Home and Hospice Care stepped up to deliver compassionate care in a time of crisis.
Now, we don't make decisions based on which patients are the most profitable to care for. There are many patients that don't have the same access to care because of their finances or the insurance or lack of insurance that they have. And we don't make decisions about not accepting patients based on that. So when somebody donates to the Archbishop's Annual Appeal, it helps us to be able to care for all patients, particularly the most vulnerable and the ones that no one else is able or willing to care for.
At the same time, Focus missionaries at Central Connecticut State University did not back down in their evangelization efforts. Focus is a Catholic collegiate outreach whose mission is to share the hope and joy of the gospel with college and university students.
So when the pandemic happened and we all moved online, I actually felt more support, and like I really felt the care that has always been there. It's just been emphasized, and so with that, it's meant a lot because I know that like I have somewhere to turn to, not only just in the pandemic, but like now and like for I'm sure years to come as well, with the Catholic Center and the campus ministry and the Focus missionaries here. And so it's just meant a lot to know that I'm loved and cared for in my faith life, and that they are looking for me to grow.
Organizations like Master's Manna in Wallingford have been the lamplighters for those facing food insecurity.
When you're making a donation, you may be helping the person who's sitting next to you at church. You may be helping to feed the child of somebody who goes to school with your children. You never know who is coming to the food pantry, and that's where this Archbishop's appeal is so important. It could be the person who's sitting next to you at worship every week.
The Columbus House in New Haven has continued to house, feed, and keep safe the homeless, despite COVID restrictions.
We immediately moved the most vulnerable, people over 60 with underlying health conditions. We moved them to the hotels. Now, the reason we move people to the hotels is this is a large shelter. The rooms in the back, there's no 6-foot distancing between the residents that stay here. The hotel allows us to put 2 clients in a room and keep everybody safely distanced.
And our seminarians have remained steadfast in their studies, reminding the faithful that even in our darkest moments, God remains.
Yeah, one thing I was just talking about recently with some of the seminarians, and also I mentioned in a homily in my parish too, was praying with a lot of the letters of St. Paul where he's in prison. Like there's a lot of letters that Paul's writing while he's in prison. And the letters that he wrote are actually referred to now by scholars as letters of joy, because even in the midst of his imprisonment and his isolation from the world, he actually was so joyful. So it's kind of a good lesson for us that, you know, we can kind of take a note from St. Paul and realizing that, yeah, we might feel, especially people who are homebound or who can't go to Mass or whatever it is, people who are just isolated and feel imprisoned in a certain sense, to kind of, even in the midst of that, to have joy, because our faith teaches us that, you know, Christ lives, you know, and God lives, and God is always there for us, even in the midst of kind of crazy times as this. So,
your contribution to the Archbishop's annual appeal is the oil these lamplighters need to brighten up the darkness.
My whole open heart is in gratitude for somebody who can recognize the humanity and the promise and the potential and that spark in a person who I think has been marginalized, has been hopeless. And so it's so much more than a check. It's recognizing the light and humanity in someone, and they feel it, and it allows us to do the work so that they can reach that full potential.
This is something that I think is very important for those who don't think they can find the help, or honestly are afraid to ask because of their stature or their economic situation.
When you give to the Archbishop's appeal, you provide hope, you provide dignity, and you quite literally save lives.
Thank you for supporting the Archbishop's annual appeal and caring truly for all of the souls here in this state. I know that the impact that is being made here at Central Connecticut State University, these students they're going to graduate and they're going to join your parish, and they are the future of the church. So I know that this investment seems crazy right now, but it's going to have a long-standing impact. And I know that I thank you and the whole church thanks you.
We're working together to try to make sure that hope is not lost, that we can continue in this work, and that it really is on us to make sure that we don't lose hope, because the work's too important, and the lives that we're privileged enough to serve require that of us.
He made the night a little brighter wherever he would go. The old lamplighter the night a little brighter wherever he